Put a cup, won't the cup?
You're going to have to stand there, Dana. Block it.
Call the meeting back to order. We'll now proceed with the next item.
Item 7, question and answers of the Department Head of Public Works and the Mayor regarding activities, total costs, and accountability to the taxpayers of Wallingford for town property located at 91 North Turnpike Road. Activities to include, but not limited to, street sweepings, disposal of catch basin materials, discharge from the vac truck, and street millings.
Okay. Councilor Economopoulos. it's
Okay,
your
thank you.
item.
Thank you. My colleagues that are well aware of this, this has been an issue, and I do want to make it perfectly clear that this is not about Mr. McCully, and he is welcome to join us at the table. I understand if he doesn't feel welcome here, but the bottom line is this is way on beyond him now, and it has nothing to do with Mr. McCully. And he's welcome to speak at any time if he wants, but I'm going to go on with what I have, and then we can take all questions at the end. 91 North Turnpike Road is a protected aquifer area over well number 1. And there has been some resistance and pushback by our current administration to say that the information in regards to this area was not well known and that it was a mistake or whatever. The bottom line is I want to determine who knew what, when, and most importantly to me, and I think to our town, how long they knew it. I have here a little thing. I'm not going to read it to you. It's if you have your sheets in front of you, councilors, you can follow that. It's going to be the same exact thing that's up on the screen if you prefer to look at the screen. It shows a pattern of unresolved problems, and it continues that this pattern is still in effect as I speak. Wallingford has exposed unnecessary costs. We've had the double handling of materials up there, and we've had citizen concerns. We've had complaints from, the first complaint from a citizen at Sunny Acres Park, and we even had a complaint filed with a Department of Public Works employee. And then, of course, the big culmination of the event was the witnessing of the discharge on the site itself in April, and that's when I actually became a witness and went down and saw what was going on. This is what it's not about. I have no complaints about the Department of Public Works, their workers, and so on. There is no vendetta here. To me, this is basically a lack of supervision and in guidance of important task of keeping our areas, especially protected aquifer programs, aquifer areas protected. To locate our problems and protocol, if we have any set protocol, if we're following the mayor, also have no idea of the total cost of this complete noncompliance throughout the 15 years that it occurred, and understand that the procedures to remain compliant now is the same as they are in 2009, and that's what they are today in 2013. The best management practices were divulged and sent to our mayor of the town then, and we have been working with that. And at this point, we still have no idea of any man hours or how many hours were there, how many times it was loaded, reloaded, and what was going on there. And I apologize for not introducing Dana Camp on my left. He's the one who put together this PowerPoint presentation and also has helped me compile a lot of the data. This was a compilation of 17 pages that you're going to see that was broken down to 55 pages, which was what I got, which he started with over hundreds of pages of FOI information and requests. And I know for a fact that Mr. McCully is sick of FOI requests. Here's your brief history. The inland wetlands raised concerns about the site encroaching on this in February 5th of 1993. Public Works Director, Mr. McCulley, agreed to cease expansion of the site. Inland Wetlands issues a cease and desist order to the director in May of '93. And the basic thing is, if private citizens are obligated to abide by state and municipal environment legislation, why should our town be any different? And that's basically what you will see in the letters that I have given you in your packets, councilors. And if you want to read the little things on the side, you can. In January of 2009, the letter from Deep to the mayor, given a copy of the BMPs, and the sites for not complying with early attempts were to correct the issues at that site.
I believe in this document, one of the things that it highlights is that the town actually received a copy of the best management practices for street sweepings and the like.
Yep. And to date, no new trees have been planted there, not to the best, and they're in the best management practices that were implemented, but we haven't implemented any of those practices. The letter is also continued down below. It's the same letter. The department strongly recommends that a town, at a minimum, follow the department's street sweeping reuse guidance document. I've learned a lot about, in spending time up in Hartford, about some of the things that can be stored on this property. Copy of this guidance document is attached for your information. Other correspondence illustrates the further state and EPA federal investigation. And the plan was put forth to remediate the site and return it to its 1993 conditions. 2,640 cubic yards were to be removed from the site.
From the Water and Sewer Division, from Vincent Masha. He has removed the plans. However, they have no objections to the remediation work as currently proposed. However, since this site is located within the aquifer protection area for the town's nearby North Turnpike well field, that's a public water supply well number 1, we request that all soil materials used to regrade and reestablish the embankments be restricted to clean, uncontaminated soils only. If any unsuitable, that is, contaminated materials are encountered in the removal process of the unauthorized fill, they should be removed from the site. And I conferred with Mr. McCulley today on this, and he's only planning to use clean loam for the sides of the embankments, which will then be seeded. And if any odd materials are encountered in the removal process, they will be taken from the site. In fact, all the materials to be removed are going to be taken off-site.
Appears that certain details of the plan were not followed, and environmental planning does not have records that any material was taken off-site. If I were to ask any questions, one question I would ask right now of Mr. McCulley were any materials taken off-site, so we can go back to that later if he would like to answer that. He doesn't have to. The wetlands delineation map was never completed. You'll see the starred sheets on that letter. The engineering department was requested to walk through the site. It was never done. And it's said so on these letters. Engineering department had no ongoing role, according to them. They said, Mr. Baltramitis says that they have no inspection records. That was his quote in the letter that you see there in front of you. And he didn't say he didn't do it. He just says they have no record of no inspection records. The wetland delineation map was requested by DEEP, but it was never done. as witnessed in that letter, in an interoffice memo. I requested to know the end result of the 2,640 cubic yards which was to be removed, and the materials that remained on the site are what Mr. McCulley has left there. Those materials are not, in his terms, considered hazardous, but they aren't in the acceptable bracket that I have seen, but that's up for debate. These are the materials that Mr. McCulley wrote back to me that did remain on the site.
Is that usable fill, Henry, or is that fill that's got to be disposed of?
I do believe the fill would be usable fill. It's, I'm trying to trace back. I became Public Works Director December 1992, and when the department no longer had to provide daily coverage for the landfill, I believe around that time, or before that, there was a crunch to find a place to deposit fill from drainage jobs, road reconstruction jobs. We now have a permitted site for those materials. And I believe that's where when it took place and the type of material that we would find in there.
So
I would like to know if we did have an appropriate registered spot, like Mr. McCulley says, then why didn't we just put the materials in that appropriate use spot, and if it is actually clean fill or not. After past remediation and encouragement not to use the site, usage was still continued. Street sweepings were collected there for 4 years, totaling 1,227 tons were removed. And it is, I believe, in his own admission that they removed that. I noticed when it says cash basin sludge, up and deep, I didn't know that Wallingford has 5,000 catch basins. Cash basin, I just noticed the mistake. You're all right, though. I'm not going to fire you. You're a great guy. There are 5,000 catch basins in our town that Mr. McCulley and his staff clean out, 3,500 to 4,000 of them each year. And there's a lot of sludge in these catch basins. They feed the oil water separator before draining to a sanitary. It's all up there. And I just don't know, somewhere in that, Mr. McCulley said he used the word, I believe, a cup full of oil. But I really ask, has anyone talked to the actual driver of the truck? Why wasn't the driver of the truck asked? And I believe if you did ask the driver of the truck what was dumped there, it would be a conflicting story.
One of the things you can see in the video is the area that's still dry around the material that's been deposited there. If you check the weather forecasts going back at that time, according to the weather records, it did not rain in the prior couple of days.
After past remediation and encouragement not to use the site, usage was still continued between 2009 and present. Street sweepings were collected there for 4 years, totaling 1,227 tons. Cleanup of the site was performed rapidly to comply with DEEP. If you read the section on the energy and environmental protection down below, if used oil is not managed properly, it can result in the pollution of oil, soil, groundwater, and surface water, etc., etc. That tells you the dangers of the oil. Just 1 quart of oil can make over 1 million gallons of drinking water unfit to drink. Half that amount can create the oil sheen that you have just seen there in an acre in size, which is why oil-laden materials must be considered and treated carefully. You go to the hazardous waste there, waste oil, antifreeze, asbestos, solid paint waste, grinding dusts. These are all considered non-hazardous materials, but I don't think you'd want them stored right next to your water. Other non-hazardous wastes include various types of waste of oils, antifreeze and solid paints and so on. Contaminated soil are also included in this category. All of these wastes are regulated on a permanent basis. Unfortunately, we have kept it quiet. We have meetings with the mayor to lend direction to the inland wetlands and other variables may be affecting the wetlands. These are notes from the mayor or from in regards to the Wetlands Committee and what is happening there. And these could be with Casey Costello, and I'm not sure, but if you go on, you can read them yourself. I'm not going to read them to you. And the meetings with the mayor were for him to give direction to inland wetlands and recommendation to not show this video to that committee on April 8th was given right here in the memo. It is not to be shown tonight. It was taken by him sloshing around this morning in the area. This is a second video taken, well, you read it yourself there. The Water Division will determine if there's any evidence of a problem.
We are a volunteer group of people that meet once a month. The town of Wallingford has paid staff to administer our, not our regulations, but our cease and desists, all the different things we do. We have paid staff. And paid staff, whether it's Aaron O'Hare or Brent Smith or the Marianne Lewis or whatever, Clark, whatever her name was, all of them are town employees here full-time, every day, every week, every year.
I thought this was a PowerPoint.
Yes, it is.
It is.
You told me it was a PowerPoint.
Are you objecting to this presentation, Chairman?
I said I have a question.
I'm asking you with a question. Are you objecting to this type of
Is
presentation?
that a video or a PowerPoint?
The video's included. The video's a part of the presentation.
Well, that was never made clear in our discussion, was it? You told me it was a PowerPoint.
I don't believe that was asked.
Mr. Economopoulos and I had a discussion. You weren't there.
Okay, so why don't you direct your question to me, Mr. Chairman? I'm right here.
I'm talking to you.
All right, what is the question?
I got that thing in my eyes.
What is the question?
I
Put that
asked,
piece of
is that
paper,
a
put the piece of
video
paper
or
there
is
for
it a
Chairman
PowerPoint?
Parisi.
That's what I asked.
Go ahead, a question again? I'm sorry?
Is it a video or a PowerPoint?
That is correct, it is both.
Okay, you told me it'd be a PowerPoint.
Would you add video also to
That's
it?
what you told me.
Yes, would you add that to it?
Okay, that's all I'm asking.
All right, you're okay with it now?
I'm not okay with it, but I have to, I guess I have to be, because you,
All right, well, what part are
kind
you
of-
objecting to, sir?
I just don't think we agreed on a video, that's all. We had a discussion. You said to me it's a
When-
PowerPoint.
Mr. Chairman?
over, that's it.
Can I ask you a question back?
What?
When anybody makes a presentation to you, do you always get ahead of time the exact details of the presentation?
Well, if I asked for it, I expect it. You told me, and you said it before we started, This pile is the exact replica of what we're gonna see. Now, that's all. I'm going by what you told me. I
know,
didn't
but
make this up.
Something has upset you, Mr. Chairman. I really would like you to tell me what it is.
Something's upset me?
Yes.
I just take it that you weren't truthful with me, that's all. That upsets me.
So you think I'm being deceitful?
I didn't say that. I said you weren't truthful with me.
That's
In our
deceit.
discussion.
That's
Well, you
deceit.
term it whatever you want.
You got it. All right. I just want to get a clear handling as to what's happening here.
Once a month. The town of Wallingford has paid staff to administer our not our regulations, but our cease and desist, all the different things we do. We have paid staff. And paid staff, whether it's Aaron O'Hare or Brent Smith or the Marianne Lewis or whatever, Clark, whatever her name was, all of them are town employees here full-time, every day, every week, every year. Now, they're supposed to be ensured that that 3,000 yards was moved, or they were supposed to be to instruct these people to do what they were supposed to do. And they were instructed not to let any more take place. So you're coming to a group of volunteers that are trying to protect wetlands, and you want us now to administer our regulations to town employees, of which the town were part of. In other words, you want Aaron Hare to go out and tell another department head, you stop that right away, and if you don't, I'm going to run up to the law department. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. But that's what you're asking.
No,
because we're relying on a staff person to do the jobs that we've asked them to do.
I understand, but you have people that are your subordinates. Part of a condition.
Who's the subordinate?
Aaron O'Hare.
Well, we told her, Aaron, did they move the 3,000 yards out they were supposed to? If they don't, you should have made them do it. Baltamitis and them, they surveyed and said to the line is, yeah, this is fine, this is the new line. Well, Brent Smith had the line before the last 10,000 yards was dumped there. So you challenge every one of them, and you bring it all up to the mayor, and you bring it up to the law department, and what happens? Because we're only here one day a month, they figure they can do anything they want. I mean, different departments do.
So I guess the confusion remains with me then. Why even be up there? In other words...
That's a good question. That's a very good question, and after 33 years, I can't quite find the answer.
So environmental service cleaned up the oily substance, the street sweepings were removed, and how do we make sure that this problem doesn't occur again?
You know, I'll be honest with you, and I apologize in advance for this editorial comment, but, you know, again, based on 5 years on the inland wetlands, this was probably the worst violation I've ever seen the town commit. I mean, we've had issues, again, going back. 2009, we cited Public Works because they were encroaching on the wetland in that area. This, whether, you know, a lot of controversy over whether it's a spillage or whatever you want to classify it as. Probably one of the worst violations that I've seen, and it's cleaned up, but how it could have happened in the first place really is upsetting. And if we didn't cite the town, how do we guarantee that something like this doesn't happen again?
In 1993, Mr. McCulley and the Department of Public Works was issued a cease and desist order by Chairman Jim Vitale to cease further activity on this property. There's not going to be any more video. We're done if you want to turn around this way, Council. This practice continued to 2008 when a resident at Sunny Acres made the formal complaint, giving up the administration of our town. The outcome of the authorities above, deep, EPA, the Army Corps of Engineers, was sent to our mayor in a letter, and we were informed about the best management practices for street sweepings, catch basin waste at that time. And they were ordered to comply. Cleanup site at that time occurred, but shortly after it was cleaned up in 2009, again, the activities culminated and started over again. And even to Mr. McCauley's admission, in the September 10th, 2013 Town Council meeting, his reasoning was that he had higher priorities. April 8th, the Department of Public Works ordered the discharge of what you saw in the video, which was clearly, in my opinion, and you just estimate yourself, quite a cup of oil. Our mayor has allowed Mr. McCauley for 15 years to violate cease and desist orders. The dumping of stockpiling of catch basins, street sweeping materials, not once but twice since 2009. In 2009 and then again from 2009 to present. The oil discharge of the vac truck of oil and waste materials took place in that period of time. As a town councilor, and I know it seems that it's a member of the D team going to debate with a member of the members of the R team, but tonight it's basically just all of us on the W team. That's the team W, try to figure it out if you can, that are asking you to sit down and permanently close down this site for DP, Public Works use. Clearly, it's not being supervised properly. There was a willful, and I'll use some of the words that Mr. Avalone used this afternoon or before in question and answer period, and that there was a willful disregard of town assets.
Mayor, you have a comment?
Let him finish, and then I'd like to make a
Okay, go ahead.
And I'd like to see it shut down because clearly there is not a very good message being sent here, and I don't feel a very good warmth right now of the message that I'm feeling. I'll stop there.
You all set?
Yes.
Mayor?
I have two comments. One's a little longer, and the second one will be a request that you read one of the documents. At no time, to my knowledge, was Public Works ordered not to use the site. In 20 years, we're talking about 3 incidents: 1993, the 2008-2009 incident, and 2013. In 1993, it was over an expansion issue. The cease and desist was not to stop using the site, it was to not expand. In 2008-9, there was a complaint regarding a variety of things. Again, the issue was whether the site had expanded, and there was a remediation to restore it to the size that was alleged to have been the original size in 1993, which was accomplished. In neither occasion was contamination or issues of that kind, to my knowledge, at issue. Then we get to 2013, and there's first an issue of oil spill, which was found to not be correct. The deposit of street sweepings, catch basin cleanings, resulted in a visit by DEP. They really found no contamination to wetlands or watershed. The accumulation of the street sweepings was an issue that had been prolonged as a result of not having a place to take them and the efforts of Public Works to not spend money they didn't want to have to spend. They wanted to locate a place to take them. Ultimately, they were not able to do so. They have been removed. So with those comments, I would like you to read verbatim the entire message that was written by Erin O'Hare, which was shown on the screen, and what all of her comments were with regard to this and her request and direction, her recommendation to the Inland Wetlands Commission.
Mr. Mayor, are you referring to the handwritten 4-page document that was presented on the screen?
That's correct.
Okay. Jim, A, outcome mayor's meeting. 1, we have no evidence of any release into the wetlands, and there is nothing obvious to respond to such as dead or dying vegetation. It is possible that the 2 wetland areas photographed do not support vegetation due to periodic inundation from storm flows. 2, the Water Division will look at the area to determine if there is any evidence of any problem. At this point, there is nothing obvious to respond to, but the town will take appropriate course of action, should there be. If this office, 3, this office will accompany Water Division staff on Friday, June 7th, to observe areas in question during anticipated rain event. 4, this office was asked by Mayor to conduct a site investigation in the general floodplain area to note occurrence of other bare open spots in the wetlands, may be a natural feature, and the bareness, thank you, of these 2 areas is not indicative of an issue. 5, it was noted that storm flows enter the site and the wetlands from runoff from Route 150, Main Street, and it is possible oil sheens can result from such routine source. B, agenda item tonight. This office recommends the Comerford DVD video not be shown to IWWC. It was taken by him morning of April 8th, sloshing through the spilled material. There is a second video taken May 30th, I believe, of the 2 bare spots in the wetlands with an oily sheen. 2, this office recommends that you, as chair, A, indicate the IWWC has acknowledged receipt of Comerford's request. B, the town is reviewing the matter. C, Water Division will investigate the area to see if there is any evidence of a problem, and if there is, it will be addressed. Aaron.
Yes, sir.
Could I ask a question of the mayor?
Please.
Mayor, I read in the newspaper about a court case where our town stopped Meriden from doing something just like this very close to our grounds. Is that true? Are you familiar with that case?
Familiar with the case.
It's not anything near, they're not doing or wanted to do what we're doing at 91 North Turnpike Road?
Well, I might point out that the town objected to Meriden's use of the area. However, our water sewer divisions, both, I believe the water division, signed off and did not have problems with what was planned by Meriden. That's part of the record. So our water division, which is certainly concerned about the aquifer and that area, was satisfied that what was planned by the city of Meriden would not be of concern to them.
So we stopped them for what reason then?
You'd have to look at the court case. There were objections. Planning and zoning believed that, I believe it was the traffic issues could be a significant change in the use of the area, and that satisfies the concerns where a special permit is requested. But it was the traffic concerns that were at issue.
So you feel it was the traffic concerns was the main issue as to why we didn't want that to occur there?
I believe the case, if you read what the judge wrote,
I'm just going
turns on that issue.
Okay, I'm going to do that. I'll go back and do that.
I could clarify that if you'd let me at this point.
Are you finished? Mayor, are you finished? You,
Yeah, that's fine.
So according to the information that I'm reviewing here, it indicated that in 2007, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted unanimously to deny Meriden's application. Zoning officials said that the project posed dangers to the public health, safety, and welfare of those residents in the area. Meriden officials said they did not plan on storing hazardous materials at the site. Despite that, and the fact that it was over the aquifer is one of the main reasons for the objection at that time.
Doesn't seem to jive. That accounting there seems to be a little bit differently than traffic.
Mayor?
I think if you look at the record, what I stated is exactly true. The judge ruled based upon traffic being a significant change in the use of the property. The issues of contamination were not, as I recall, part of the decision because our own water division had not objected to what Meriden was planning to do.
I rest. I maybe go to sleep forever.
Councilor Fishbein?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, Mr. Chairman, I've brought up this in the past, and it continues to occur. I come to a meeting here tonight, and there's additional documents thrown at us, which, you know, people in the audience might think that I'm not paying attention. I'm trying to review the stuff that I walked into here tonight. So no disrespect meant. I had some questions of Councilor Economopoulos, though, and his some of his representatives.
Before I answer those questions, would you tell me what documents you got tonight that were so threw you off? No, just what threw you off?
This whole packet.
That packet you have received, that's a summary packet of everything we've given you in the past. I tried to make it condensed. We took 100 and something pages, condensed to 55, and then I don't know how many that is, 18, 17, I don't know. But we just try to keep condensing for you so that you have everything in front of you.
But the simple fact of the matter is when I get to a meeting and I'm given this packet of approximately 25 pages, I still have to go through it. And I still have to say, well, gee, okay, here's one. I've got to read a portion of it. I've got to say to myself, have I seen this before? I've got to go through each of these pages and do that. And that is somewhat time-consuming.
So don't bring those documents in the future. Don't bring a summary document for you when I make a presentation.
No, but an email was sent actually with the last document here is an email actually from Mr. Camp that was sent only to 2 councilors at 11:21 this morning, and that was you and Councilor Zandri, and for some reason the rest of us were excluded. Very easily, it could have been sent to all of us,
now, hold on.
and I would have had an
He's not a
opportunity to
council.
look at it.
You answer.
My apologies. As you, ladies and gentlemen, know, at this point I'm still a private citizen, so I'm still not completely up to knowing all the rules and regulations of exactly how to disseminate documents through the council. I did forward the information to the council secretary as instructed by Councilor Economopoulos after I was told that this was necessary.
So why only send it to 2 councilors? Because yes, you are a private citizen, but I would, and I don't play those games. Everybody up here
not a
knows.
game.
Everybody up here knows that I don't like it when someone just sends me something. I always tell people, notify Sandy, send it to Sandy, and then send it to all of us. So, you know, on the morning of, and it's just, it's distracting for me to have to go through that. But that being said.
My understanding, most of these documents are things that you've already received in a version of the council packet, which I'm not privy to. I understand that you received a pretty hefty sized packet to prepare for this meeting, and I believe that all those documents are included in that.
Well, you're able to request it.
I can request the council packet.
Sure you can.
In addition to the agenda.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, you can.
Yes, a lot of people do
I
it.
think what his point is tonight, I said, Nick, I mentioned it to you earlier. I walked in and there was a file. And I wasn't sure what we had already and what was new.
But here's my point. My point is there wasn't one document that you were handed today that you should not have either been aware of or had such a tremendous impact on what just happened in the last 35 minutes. Yet that's what we'll sit here and squabble over.
no, I'm not
so
gonna
it's just
squabble.
a
I'm
case
just
of
trying to
it's a
explain.
case of deflection and camouflage. I talk about that all the time, and one of the councils here is pretty good at it.
Well, so let's get to the questions that I've been pining to ask. You've made an allegation here tonight that in 1993 there was a cease and desist that was issued restricting Mr. McCauley from using 91 North Turnpike Road property for any purposes. Is that your representation to the public here tonight and to us?
No, you read it.
I've read it.
Okay, so then
So-
why don't you tell me what you got out of it?
Would you agree that there
I'm
never
not gonna-
was?
I am not going to go under cross-examination from you, Mr. Fishbein.
You've chosen to make a presentation to make
That's
certain
right.
allegations.
That's right, and then that's fine,
And
and
you're
that's my
unwilling to
presentation.
stand up to those allegations.
Oh, I'm saying that it's there. It's on paper. I don't have everything memorized in this packet.
So you're retracting your statement?
No, I am not retracting anything I said tonight.
Okay. So in 1993, was there a cease and desist order issued against Henry McCulley with regard to the operative property?
Do I need a lawyer?
I don't know. You already
No,
have
you asked
one.
me. You asked me, do I need a lawyer? Because if I do, I want to get one.
All
There's
right,
plenty in the telephone book.
all right, look.
All right, you're
right.
darn right. The phone book is loaded with them.
All right, let's,
Do you claim there
he's
was a
asking
cease?
questions, which he has a right to ask. Now, it's your item. If you don't want to answer them, fine. Let's move along then.
So
Let's move along then.
you don't want to answer any questions with
Let's
regard
move along. Next
to
question.
your
Mr. Fishbein.
presentation?
Go to
So,
the next question.
okay. What do you allege happened in July of 2010 with regard to this property and a possible violation? You don't remember?
Stockpiling of materials, yeah.
And who made a finding that there was a...
They're through
That was
FOIs.
a problem.
Everything here is through FOIs. There's no findings other than, in other words, I wasn't searching the property in that year in any way, search or form. These are all from FOIs of admissions of storage of materials, catch basin materials, street sweepings, millings,
So
okay?
is it your position that
Yes, it's my position that for 15 years or so, on and off, I don't know what he stores and where and when, but yes, he was using that property for those particular things, street sweepings, millings, catch basin materials. If I leave out something or add something I shouldn't have, please forgive me.
is it your position that that wasn't supposed to occur?
It's my position that they were asked to stop in 2009.
Okay. So 2009, who allegedly told them to stop that?
I believe it's in the memo there. I don't know. I don't remember now. It's there. It's right there.
I've
We
reviewed the
just read it.
documents, and I have yet to find any document that says that they were
All right,
told
I'll go
to
back and look
stop.
for you. I'll go back and look.
If I may, in 2009, we went through a large remediation project to bring this site back to the levels that they were in 1993 after encroachment, and I think that the documents do show that, the public record from other meetings do show that. At that point in time.
From other meetings or from our packet? Because I'm just going by the many pages that we've been given that
I
I've
did try to summarize.
thoroughly reviewed.
I did try to summarize information in the packet and as well as the videos that would show that this has occurred.
So can you point me to any one document within the, I don't know, 70, 80, 90 pages that we've been given here that directed Henry McCulley to stop use of that site?
There is no document at this point instructing Henry McCulley to stop use of the site entirely. There are several pieces of information instructing to stop encroaching, which we did take steps to do. We know the sensitive area of the site. We're aware of the fact that the activities taking place on the site included street sweeping, storage for more than a year. They were not covered. We already know that this is a problem. I think what we're asking for here tonight at this point is to consider stop using the site entirely because we see that this is becoming an ongoing problem. We've had problems in the past from the state and federal level investigating it, and the cost of keeping everything in compliance in this site just does not make sense anymore.
Okay, none of that is in the supporting documents, but because I know there's been FOI requests about the costs of transporting materials from this site, and none of that's in here.
Right.
So while you
we've-
make representations that we shouldn't be spending this money, none of that is in here. I've seen those documents, and I think Henry was asked questions by me last time we were here with regard to those monies that were expended, and I believe what he said was that we would have had to transport them anyway, and that our added costs per se, if there were any, was approximately $3,000. I think you were here for that meeting.
I was. In fact, I reviewed the video and made decisions on what video to include and what not to include. I went through about an hour and a half worth of video to narrow it down to the approximately 6 minutes which were included in here.
Okay.
And obviously several hundred documents.
The last area that I had is the video which showed the wet ground. Is there a certain portion of that area that it's your position, either one of you, that DEEP has said should not be used?
The materials that were deposited there, as you know, are the catch basin cleanings.
No. Question is, was there any portion that was shown on that video of the wet portion that it's your understanding, your position, that DEEP says should not be used?
Just to make sure I understand the question correctly, you're asking if DEEP is saying that the site should, you're asking if the material that is being deposited there, according to DEEP, should not be deposited there?
That no material should be deposited in a certain portion of that area?
Come on.
The fact is that we were storing the materials improperly because we exceeded
So the answer to the
guidelines
question
of
is
one-
no. All of that area can be used
He's just putting you under,
for storage by Public
he's
Works.
just putting you under cross-examination. Don't.
All that area can be used for storage by Public Works. It's the question of what is stored there. Is that what you're saying?
What and how is being stored there, right. So according to DEEP, we may use that site because the state of Connecticut can't tell the town how to carry out certain pieces of business. And at this point, the town has made the decision to continue to use the site because this is Mr. McCauley's preference as the Director of Public Works, and under direction from the mayor or non-direction of the mayor, but I'm not sure if he's made a decision one way or the other about that, we continue to use that site.
And nobody has told them they can't use the site?
Nobody's told him he can't use the site from an authoritative standpoint. Organizations that would like to do not have the authority to, and I think that we've seen that in the comments from Inland Wetlands, from Planning and Zoning. There's obviously aggravation there, but they are stuck. They don't have the authority to be able to do that.
Also,
I don't even know if the council has the authority to do it, but I think that this council is also a great place where ideas can come to light and we can add direction to the mayor. We can show him some of the preferences, some of the ideas that the town has brought forward, and this can be a proving ground for those ideas so we can move the town in the right direction.
would you also agree that DEEP has not been of the assistance that you would like to have happen?
I'm sorry, can you run that by me again?
You've said that certain agencies are frustrated. That's your claim.
Inland Wetlands is frustrated, Planning and Zoning is frustrated.
Well, we saw
particularly
one
members.
individual from Inland Wetlands. We saw one individual from Planning and Zoning. For you to say that the whole board is frustrated, I think is a stretch, but
I have seen the whole videos. I do encourage you to go back, and you have the meeting dates now. If you'd like to request the DVDs, you can definitely do that.
it's your presentation.
Happy to share that material with you after the meeting if you'd like to review that.
I wish that I was able to review that before this meeting, but that's another question. That's all I have at this time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Just, Mr. Fishbein, the letter here to Mayor, the memorandum, I should say, to Mayor Dickinson, Adam Mansaris, Henry McCulley from Aaron O'Hare regarding the DEEP EPA investigation and the DEEP request,
When is that? Is there a date on
dated
that?
February 18th, 2009.
Okay, can I just, let me get the-
Sure. It's about 7 or 8 pages into the packet that was
The
in
new
your
packet?
page under number 7.
the new packet?
No, the packet that you had.
The old
In
one?
your packet, yeah. Concerning the letter of complaint by Councilman Michael Spiteri contacting this office on February 13th in response to the complaint about the site and its location in the Aquifer Protection District, possible erosion in the wetland, possible storage of unpermitted materials, lack of enforcement regarding the filling. He felt the State Department of Health of Wallingford Water Division should be notified as to what materials are being stored and the materials are excavated at the site, Upon his request, this office contacted the Water Division. It's a pretty long memo. You can read it. I'm
Well,
not gonna read it.
I've read it. I've read this whole package.
So that pretty much shows the attitude of what they thought should be stopped at that particular area. Now, yes,
Who's they?
it's a letter from Erin O'Hare, and it's regarding the Public Works storage of 91 North Turnpike Road. She's our environmental planner, I believe.
Yeah, I'm just, when you say they, you're talking about inland wetlands or Aaron?
It's a letter from Erin,
Okay.
and she represents them, does she not? Didn't Mr. Vitale just say that?
She is a liaison, and I'm just
All
trying
right,
to...
so I'm not going to get into details, because you're too good at that, and I'm going to lose. So-
I'm just trying to get to your point of this
Yeah, no.
memorandum.
Even when I find something that it's not worthy of mention, so let's just forget it.
No,
You're
I'm-
right, I'm done too, Mr. Chairman.
You know, just on that, when you, there's a document in here dated April 3rd of 2009. It's a letter from a Marla Butts. No, actually, from the town of Wallingford to Marla Butts. In the bottom right-hand corner, there's a 1, and the pages after that aren't included. Is there a reason? I would assume since the bottom of number 1 of this page is a 1 and there's no signature, that there's additional pages that were...
I am not privy of any further pages as part of that. I'm sorry.
You're aware of...
I do recall seeing correspondence to and from Marla Butts.
There's no signature on this?
I do not recall seeing a signature page. I can go back and double-check the information that I have from my paper originals. I do not believe I have other pages.
And who would you have gotten this letter from?
Still looking. It might take a little bit if you'd like to ask another question or...
No, I'm done. I just wondering. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any other question? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just going to make a point and then a follow-up, and I think I'll be done. I just want to kind of outline what the court's decision was in the appellate court and the Superior Court. I'm going to read it here. It says, the appellate judge and the court concluded that general discussions such as public health, safety, and welfare, which are enumerated in zoning regulations, may be the basis for the denial of a special permit. So that's why that court ruled that. It wasn't about the traffic and so forth.
Jason, can I just ask what you're looking at?
I'm looking at the article from the Record Journal where the quote's coming from the court.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
the decision I was referring to, I believe, was the Connecticut Supreme Court. It was the final appellate level. I mean, it was bouncing around, different opinions, but the Supreme Court, I believe, ruled on this case.
Jason, do you have a title of the case? Because I have access to that stuff.
I don't have the title to the case, not in this article anyway, but it's the most recent one, that the article from the paper where it says Wallingford wins border dispute, and that's really where I wanted to wrap up my comment, and like I said, I'm pretty sure I'll be finished at this point. I find it amazing that we're sitting up here having a discussion about dumping in the protected aquifer, because we know what that property is. We've had inland wetlands go all the way back to 93 saying that we should stop using this area, but no real control to do so. A cease and desist order back in May 5th of 1993. We did have Deep here also making the comments that we should not be using this area because it sits over protected aquifer. And we continued to use it anyway, and the commentary was there's nowhere else to put it, and we haven't had time to look for another location. Now, Had Meriden used the same logic for their street sweepings and their catch basin cleanings and just kept dumping it in the closed landfill because they had no other place to put it and no time to look for anywhere else, this town would be beside itself that Meriden did that to us. But yet it seems to be quite fine that we can do it to ourselves. There's an aquifer there. We shouldn't be dumping, and we should find some other place to put it. And that's pretty much where I'm going to leave it. Thank you.
Mayor?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make clear once again, at no time was the town given a cease and desist to stop using that site. The orders related to whether there was an expansion of the site. That was 93 and 2008-9. In 2009, there was a remediation to draw back to the lines that were allegedly those used in 1993. Even in the 2013 issue over the catch basin spillings, there was no finding of any contamination in either aquifer or wetland. Everyone's concerned about what goes on there, and I'm not making light of that, but I don't think we should characterize things inaccurately. There is an issue for Public Works to have a staging area to do the work they must do. It requires moving. They have piles of concrete and other matters used at the 91 North Turnpike area. Those things are deposited there and then they're moved out. They cannot do their work without staging areas. I understand the concerns about wetland, but I do not think it is fair to anyone to mischaracterize the history of this or what the violations have been or alleged to be. Once again, the cease and desist dealt with expansion of the area, not with regard to use of the area and not with regard to contamination that was allegedly had occurred there.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. The IWWC at its May 5th meeting in 1993 instructed this office to issue a cease and desist order for all expansion activities occurring at the above referenced location. You are hereby notified to cease all ongoing operations and to desist from any future activities regarding depositation of any fill materials at the site. The way I read that is any, not just expansion, but any.
I think the record is very clear that given other offices as well as that office, it was the issue of expansion, and obviously they refer to expansion in their wording there. At no time since then, until 2008 or 9, was there any issue made. And then it was again the issue of expansion. The record is clear.
I was going to call on Councilor Lofton. Are you directly involved in this discussion? Go ahead.
I just want to quote from the interoffice memorandum, February 5, 1993, from Brent Smith, who at that time was the environmental planner, to Mr. McCauley, and it says, future stockpiling should be limited to the already disturbed area, open parentheses, vertical expansion. However, do not place any new fill at the edge of the existing disturbed area, as this will result in the erosion of materials downslope into the natural undisturbed area. The record is clear that from there, that's February 5, 1993, May 12, 1993, once again from Brent Smith to Mr. McCauley, says a cease and desist order of all expansion activities occurring at the above referenced location. So it's certainly clear. Also, the recent case that came down October 1st of 2013 is the case of City of Meriden versus Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Wallingford. The last sentence, 2 sentences, of the decision says, on the basis of this record, we conclude that there was substantial evidence in the record to support the defendant's denial of the plaintiff's special permit application on the basis of an unacceptable increase in the intensity of the use of the landfill in accordance with the special criterion set forth in the Wallingford zoning regulations. Accordingly, the court properly dismissed the plaintiff's appeal. That is the decision of the court. So I think that's different than what was reported. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Laffin, did you have a comment?
Maybe. Can you email the keynote presentation?
The keynote's fairly large. It's about 800 megs. I'm working on stripping down the video, and I will be submitting a copy of it that will fit on a disk.
Okay. So it would be on a
council
disk or
office tomorrow.
Dropbox or something then? Okay. In addition to everything that was stated about the expansions and whatnot, I haven't seen anything presented that demonstrates the council has any additional authority to do anything more than we've already discussed at the previous meeting versus even this meeting. So I just don't know. I know you suggested goals at the beginning, but I don't see that we have any authority or any cause to continue any further. I don't know if somebody else has a comment or a counter to that. I just don't see a point.
But I will go to the public.
No, yeah, of course. Yep.
When we're pretty well set here. Is it okay to go?
I'm good.
Okay.
I
Is
don't
it
think I
okay
have
to
anything
go to
else.
public? Okay, sir, do you want it to raise your hand? 1 minute.
Ken Daly, 594 North Elm Street. What a love fest this has been. I think it's time for all of us to step back a little bit so that we can focus on the real problem. Do we all know that the aquifer is contaminated? Do all you know that? The aquifer is contaminated.
Every official report I've seen indicates that the aquifer has not been contaminated.
But it is contaminated.
That's not the information that we've received.
Okay, I'm not saying DEP accuses us or accused you or Mr. McCauley of contaminating the aquifer. The aquifer itself is contaminated with salt and with hydrocarbons. What's interesting, and what I was surprised to find, is that production well number 1, which is the closest well to the site we've been talking about, shows no signs yet. Shows no signs yet of contamination. You should also know, I thought you would know, that there's a treatment system in place over that aquifer. It draws from production well number 1, and it's attached to a stripper, an air stripper, and it gets the hydrocarbon contamination going into that well down to a concentration that's consumable by human drinking beings. It's not worth the kind of fighting we've been doing here. What is worth is the aquifer itself. Not just the aquifer, but the other sites that have been mentioned. I fear that we are going to become the kind of town where nobody would want to go to and where no one can live. This is a prized resource. And it's there not just for us, but for our kids and our grandkids and our grandkids. And what are they going to say about us if we're saying we don't have the time, we have other priorities? We're going to keep on dumping because the financial imperatives in and down from the mayor's office make it really tough to spend money. It's as if we know the price of everything and the value of nothing. Back in July, before all this happened, I got up here and I was not as articulate as I am now. I'm kidding. And I offered the idea of an environmental compliance plan, because I know that's what you all need. And it is within your authority to say that you will not permit further expenditures that could have an environmental impact unless such a plan is done. You have the talent right here in town working for you. The wetlands, the aquifer administrator, the aquifer protection administrator is more than ready to pitch in with the environmental planner and draft up the kind of document that can be produced and bounce off the other departments in this town, so you don't have to go through this kind of fight again. It is embarrassing to watch you guys tearing each other apart. The kind of plan I'm talking about goes a little bit further than the BMPs that you guys have been talking about. BMPs are discrete. They're fine-pointed little needles that a regulatory agency puts out there so you'll stop thinking. The real creativity would come from a compliance plan that can be merged with your own management system here in town. A great example would be, and I don't know the status here in town, but the Public Works has fuel tanks. I'm sure they're compliant. I think they're fairly new, and they have interstitial monitoring between one wall and another for those tanks. What if you had, and it's available on the market, temperature sensitive volumetric monitoring, real-time monitoring? You could say goodbye to the pilferage of your fuels, and you could say goodbye to the vendors that show up that have their truck sitting in the sun all day and then show up at 4 o'clock because the fuel expands and it looks like more and you get billed for more. But a temperature corrected system is one that solves that problem for you. He bills you $1,300, you cross out $1,300 and fill in the correct amount and then put the check. There's no law against not thinking. There's no law about doing things, environmentally green things for their own sake. You use this opportunity to advance your compliance state within your management system, and you enhance both. I'm just asking for sure. There were no takers back in July when I first mentioned it. And I felt those being too declarative, saying this town needs an environmental compliance plan. I'm not like that. But it's being offered up here as a pathway to a solution. that will give some form and some reason to your discussions. Now, no one was more shocked than I was to hear Mr. McCauley's words about it wasn't a spill I did it on purpose. It was controlled. But that man has one heck of a job. I don't think any of you would want his job. Instead of calling him wanton and willful in depositing stuff on that area, isn't it obvious that he was reluctant to do it because he had no other choices? Willful, wanton, and reluctant. Cut the guy some slack. How many of you have thrown a paper clip away? Or poured your coffee out, out in the parking lot? This guy here was caught by his little sister pouring campfire starter fluid down a monitoring well at Yosemite National Park. I'm not perfect either. I'm not here for religious reasons. But I don't want, I can remember right now my sister saying, we're Catholics. It had to be sent somewhere. My father did his, and,
All right.
let me finish. I suggest that you ask the mayor to put together a team of people like the ones I mentioned, and to draft and to think out a plan of procedures. That's more than BMPs. That capitalizes on things you may not even have thought yet. And this thing would become the reason for something good to happen. But let bygones be bygones, and just sleep on what I'm saying. Among yourselves, ask yourselves some questions. But this has been embarrassing the last month. I don't know if you've been, but I think the towns have been embarrassed. Rather than a prosecution, I think what we need is a good, solid conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Avalon.
Vincent Avalon, One Eyes for Court. There's been discussion, questions, whether or not this material is dangerous, hazardous, or whatever. Can somebody tell me why there were 2 shipments to Manchester of this material? If there's nothing wrong with it, why did it have to go to Manchester?
It went to Manchester because they were the cheapest vendor. And we used a town contract to Imperial Rubbish to take it to the city of Manchester's landfill, and they would accept it.
I guess my question is, why didn't it stay where it was? If there's no problem, if it's a permitted use, it's non-toxic, there's no problem with it, why did we have to send it to Manchester?
Because it was considered a special waste. It was never a hazardous waste. It was called a special waste, and a special waste like street sweepings can be used as landfill cover. And the city of Manchester does have a fully functional landfill, and they accepted the material.
But I still don't understand why it didn't stay where it was. Why did we incur, I don't know, somewhere around $30,000, or there were 2 bids, I'm not sure the amounts, maybe $15,000. Why did we do it if there's not a problem there?
Well, there was a problem. I believe you know that. We didn't have a permit to store it there. That's why we had to move it.
And why didn't we have a
permit? It's been said
permit?
about 100 times here.
Why didn't we have a permit? Is there a reason why we didn't have a permit?
Catch basin cleanings were not regularly placed there. That was the error. Is that correct, Mr. McCulley?
I'm not sure regularly placed there. Was there a permit to place the street sweepings there in the first
Okay,
place?
well, there's two different things. There's the catch basin cleanings and the street sweepings.
Right.
Street sweepings were there because, as previously stated, we did not have another place to put them. Mr. McCulley was looking for another location as late as 2010, 11. There, in the various issues that came up with regarding other sites were mentioned as possibilities. They were ruled out. Ultimately, Mr. McCulley was without a place to take them, and then the incident that arose out of first the catch basin cleanings and then the street sweeping issue surfaced, and we know the rest. But there is not an indication. I think Mr. McCulley was indicating it's not hazardous, it does require a special permit, it shouldn't be there, and it was removed.
I know, and listen, let me get something straight from the previous
Excuse me,
speaker.
may I
This is not,
stand corrected.
this is not to persecute or prosecute anyone. It's to make sure that whatever went on, if it was done improperly, illegally, isn't done again. And you're never going to get that straightened out unless you can determine what went on was wrong. If somebody doesn't stand up and face the fact, was this wrong? Did it create a potential danger to the aquifer? Unless we come to that, we're never going to resolve whether or not this activity can continue in the future. And that's why it's important, in my mind, not to persecute Mr. McCulley, but to find out how we're supposed to do this. If we're supposed to have a permit to dump certain things there, there must be a reason why we have to have a permit. And if there was a reason to have a permit and we didn't have the permit, then why don't we get to the bottom of this and say, why didn't we have the permit? How did we circumvent that? That's one of the issues here. And whether it's regularly stored there or it's irregularly stored there or done all the time is not the issue. If it was done there and there's no permit, why don't we get to the bottom of why isn't a permit required or gotten, and let's do it in the future. Otherwise, so we do this again in the future. We don't get a permit, we put it down there, we have an argument of whether it's hazardous, non-hazardous, and there's different definitions of hazardous materials. The state has one, our aquifer protection regulations has a different definition of hazardous material, but that's the question that I had. If it's not a problem, we should have left it where it was. And then just let me move on. And Councilman Fishman, fine. You certainly have a right to ask the questions that you asked of Mr. Economopoulos. Absolutely. My question is this. When Mr. McCulley was here at a council meeting and was asked, did you dump materials that you shouldn't have dumped, and I'm paraphrasing, somebody can correct the exact language, but did you do that between 2009, 2013? Yes, I did. Did you do it knowing that it was in violation of state and local environmental laws? Yes, I did. Why wasn't the examination that you just had of Mr. Economopoulos, why at that time, when we have the director here making those statements, why wasn't it asked, what environmental laws did you break? What materials were you dumping there that you shouldn't have dumped? Why not ask those questions at that time? And you obviously don't have to answer, but I'm sure you will.
Well, I mean, usually when I'm asked a question, I do address it. And, you know, the distinction between the two is if Mr. McCauley had come to us and he had said things like, that never happened, I didn't know anything about that, I would have asked questions to that effect. Tonight, I heard there was a cease and desist in 1993 to use that property in any way, shape, or form. And I knew that the documents that I had didn't support that position, so I attempted to ask about that. And unfortunately, my questions were not answered. So that's the distinction. It's the examination of the presentation. I certainly was not happy with what I heard that night, but I sat here and I said, well, we are somewhat constrained. There's levels of personnel matter, there's inland wetlands, there's aquifer protection, which we don't do. And I understand that sometimes this room and this body is used as a stage, and I try not to feed into that, but there's certainly a distinction in the examination based upon the presentation. So I hope that answered your question.
I don't think you did, so let me try it one more time. I said from my opening statement was, I agree that you had every right to ask the questions of Mr. Economopoulos that you asked tonight. And you probably would have been shirking your duties if you didn't ask him those questions. My question is, why didn't you inquire of Mr. McCauley, any of you really, that night when Mr. McCauley said, I willfully, yes, willfully, and I say wantonly because it's disregard, because he said, I knew it was against the law, I did it anyway, and I had higher priorities. Why wasn't there some concern at that point in time? What do you mean you violated environmental law willingly, and you've done it over a period of time? What materials were you dumping down there at this aquifer protected area? Why wasn't that a concern at that time?
It's always of concern, and I don't agree with your characterization of what Mr. McCauley said. He never said that he dumped or deposited anything. He said that they did it upon direction. As far as wanton, willful, all of that stuff, that can be presumed, but that wasn't his statement that I heard. So I guess you can characterize it however meets your mission, but that wasn't what I heard that night. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to, and I know that's unusual, but I think I've addressed your questions.
Okay. First of all, it's not anything to do with my mission. My mission is to see to it that environmental laws, local and state, are followed and enforced. And quite frankly, I'm going to comment on your comment that you said that it's not within the purview, again, not exact quote from you, but the council can't really do anything about this. You've said that in the past. And it was the mayor's, under the charter, it was the mayor's responsibility to take action against Mr. McCauley if there was going to be any disciplinary action at all. But it's not a matter of my personal mission. I think it's a responsibility, and it still is to this day. No one, except Mr. Economopoulos and Mr. Zandri, have questioned what went on, or questioned Mr. McCauley as to what laws he willfully violated over a period of 4 years, 2009 to 2013, and he referenced this site that we're talking about, 91 North Turnpike Road, specifically. I'm not mischaracterizing. If you want to get a transcript of that meeting and go over what Mr. McCauley admitted to that night, I'll stand by it right now. He admitted he violated the law during that period of time. He knew it. He had no place else to dump it, and he had higher priorities. That's exactly what was said. And nothing to this day, nobody other than those two counselors have questioned that. And again, it's not to go against Mr. McCauley, it's to see to it that this kind of activity doesn't go on in the future, and it will. It's going to continue to, because nothing's been done. The mayor has not stood up and said, you know, Mr. McCauley, what you did was wrong. And the fact that some tests may show that there's no contamination on there, what do? Wait till we get a report that our aquifer has been negatively impacted by this and then take action? Is that the test of whether we follow the laws or not? I don't think so. I don't think so. And I can tell when this is all over, if this is the way it ends and there's no action by the mayor, he doesn't stand up and say, Mr. McCauley, what you did was wrong. You have to follow the laws just like everybody else here, especially in an issue like this where it's public safety and health with an aquifer protected area. And I haven't heard the mayor or anybody else say that there was anything wrong with what Mr. McCauley did. As a matter of fact, there was an excuse offered by the mayor that Mr. McCauley had no place else to throw this.
Mayor, you have to come.
Yeah, Mr. McCauley knows that it is wrong, and we've had conversations about it. The bottom line is it's not being used for this any longer and will not be. I mean, we're shipping it out of town at this point.
Right.
So as far as I'm concerned, there is an indication that the violations will not continue.
Again, it doesn't deal with the illegality and condoning this kind of activity. And after the fact, to clear up a problem that was committed willfully and somebody rectifies that problem is to say that's fine. I've given the example before. We'll go out and rob a bank. You catch me, I'll give you back the money, and everything is fine.
No, I think he admitted he was wrong, and that satisfied me.
Well, first of all,
I'm not out to shoot him or hang him or anything else.
you know what, and this goes back to my statement.
I'm not.
This goes back to my statement earlier during the public question and answer, where there was a reference to lynching Mr. McCauley. So I guess me or some citizen coming up here and bringing to the attention of the mayor and our council that the director of public works willfully violated environmental laws over a period of at least 4 years. I guess the message is to citizens, don't come up here and bring that to anybody's attention.
No, that isn't true at all.
Oh, it's
And
not?
No, it isn't.
Well, what is, so?
I don't
what
like
is-
the debate with attorneys because I'm not an attorney.
Right?
But the way you characterize it, you make it seem like it's nasty. He admitted he was wrong.
Yeah, and he was acknowledged as being forthright.
And you're acknowledging that he did too.
Did what?
And the mayor said that it's being remediated.
That's correct.
Now, what else do we do?
I want somebody to say, in a leadership position in this town, so that the residents of this town know that the department heads, everyone is accountable to the law. That's what I want to know. I want to hear them say, you know what, you violated the law, you shouldn't have done it, these are the consequences, and without law and order, we don't have an efficient government. And that's what I want to hear. And when someone does something like this and makes an admission, this is not a political allegation, this isn't anything. This is an admission by someone, not prompted by anybody. It was a voluntary admission, and when that's done, I think it should be addressed, and the public should know that that's not going to be condoned.
Well, I'll tell you, there is no hard set rule as to what's to be done. Each manager makes his own determination.
About the law?
How he'll handle
what?
the situation. The mayor said they sat down, they had discussions, and it's being remediated. Now, if that's the way he handles it, it's fine.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Mr. Luby. Come on.
West Luby, Monterey's Trail. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't come here tonight to speak on this subject, but after listening to what has transpired, I can't just sit there and say nothing. I think that Echo and his comments in the last couple of meetings have been very to the point, and I can imagine sitting where you people are, it's uncomfortable to hear those comments. And whenever you are uncomfortable, the old political trick is to attack the messenger. And I saw that happening here tonight, and I don't want to let that go without pointing out to you something that everybody on the west side of town knows. That well, number one, is on the corner of Ridgeland Road and North Turnpike Road, and approximately 300 feet away from the very land that we're talking about. The proximity is underlined by the town. When the town drilled that well, at that point, they were doing so because they thought that was the best point at which to reach the aquifer. It's passing underneath Wallingford. And they have been using that well for years, and for most of the west side of town. And my family and I have lived on the west side of town all these years, like maybe 60 or more. I think that this is a very, very serious subject, and for it to be treated as lightly as it has been, you have treated it very seriously. People on the west side do not. This is something that has been revealed to you, and you should have taken steps to see that it doesn't continue, and that those involved are made to pay for it. You don't just say, gee whiz, I'm sorry, and walk away. This is the problem. It just does not seem fair to say that our public works director, our mayor, never received a cease and desist. Do they have to? When they're only 300 feet away from a well to the aquifer, they have to have somebody tell them to cease and desist? That's nonsense. God forgive me if I'm exaggerating in my remarks. It's not my intent, but it's a very serious subject. One of the things that has also been dwelt on at some length is the words increase or expansion. And some of these quotations that were shown here tonight referred to no further expansion. Now, expansion of type, expansion of temperature, expansion of time, expansion of content. That person that wrote that letter never defined what they meant by expansion. And to the first thought that most of us would have in our minds is that expansion is expansion of space. You can't expand it any further, when that may not have been the intent of the writer at all. So I wouldn't dwell on that particular word. It has no meaning. The land was used in an unlawful manner. And any time I use anything in an unlawful manner, I have to look over my shoulder because I know I'm wrong. When I'm going 70 in a 65-mile zone, I pay attention to my rearview mirror. I know I'm violating the law. And apparently, the leaders of the town, over and over and over, had drawn to their attention that there were lights in that rearview mirror, and did nothing about it until it surfaced this year. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just, I think, obviously, the Director of Public Works is being criticized for not making efforts to be as environmentally conscious and consistent as he should. I'd like Henry if he could just relate some of the other things that we have done, most of which your volition, with regard to the salt and oil-water separation, and you can just indicate a few of those things. Many towns are not doing these things.
First of all, I'd like to say, all my critics in this room, I wonder what you would have done if I had found an outlet for the street sweepings at no cost to the town of Wallingford. The only intention I had was to save the town of Wallingford money. If If I didn't have to pay to dispose of it, I didn't want to. And that was the basis of my decision. It's a serious matter when you're accused of contaminating an aquifer. The town of Wallingford Public Works has been using that since 1910. The last check I had with the water department, Mr. Luby's well had not been contaminated. There is not a shred of evidence that those street sweepings or the fill that occurred since 1910, up until I believe it was before the Inland Wetlands Act, shows one iota of evidence that anything has been contaminated. We have remediated the site. In 2009, we have not expanded upon that. And the street sweepings were stored there for a reason I've admitted. They were unpermitted. I don't like the illegal aspect of this. This is town of Wallingford land. It was stored on town of Wallingford land, not in someone else's land. And as far as like the mayor said, we have in our garage, we spent over $700,000 many years ago, not long after I became the public works director. We used to wash our trucks out over a catch basin. We were cited by the deep. And this town poured about $700,000 into a salt shed and what is now the truck wash bay that is used by public works and any other department. The fire department comes in there. And those catch basins and the material that comes out of there, it gets treated, it goes through what they call an oil water separator. The oil water separator is cleaned every year by a contractor, not by public works. They clean it out and they take it away. And the water is piped, the excess water is piped into the sanitary sewer, so it doesn't go into the stormwater system. We have a stormwater monitoring permit for the Public Works Department. We have a consultant. They test it. They send the results to the state of Connecticut. We also do the same thing at the recycling center. So I'm not sitting around and, yes, I don't like the accusations. I'm very proud of my department and of my men. I don't hear anybody complaining when you got your resident drop-off, the Christian Street Bridge, the Reskin Drive Bridge, and 11 roads paved today. Where's that? We never hear that. All we get is the negativity. And I think for the benefit of your popularity, you may want to start to recognize the hard work of some other people.
Let's wait a minute, Mr. Avalon. Let's let Mr. Gross get a bite of the apple.
Good evening, Bob Gross. This has nothing to do with Mr. McCauley. This is just a general with the mayor and so forth, because as you know, I've discussed issues of pollution and environmental concerns over the years, whether it's the dioxin from Covanta, dropping sand and salt at Garden Road. I would just hope that everybody realizes just because you've had past practices doesn't make them good practices. As technology changes and environmental laws change, we become aware of potential harms to our environment. Because we dropped something there in 1910, we're now aware that those chemicals that we worked with asbestos and so forth now cause diseases and death. So we should be careful what we do, because as the World Health Organization stated just last week, that air pollution now is a known carcinogen, and it causes cancer. As many of these chemicals, whether they're dumped there or elsewhere, built up large enough concentration, cause harm to the environment. So I would just hope that the council or the mayor, as I think it's under the mayor's purview, that you would be more conscious of these things to protect the citizens of Wallingford. That's part of the mayor's responsibility, to have a safe town. Well, pollution isn't safe because it kills, and it kills every one of us or harms us in some way. So I would hope that you would take a better look at that. And when there was discussion on permitting, who permits that piece of property? I mean, where do you go for a permit to drop something there? Mr. Mayor, Council, I mean, there's talk of you could permit it. What does that mean?
Well, deep permits, I don't know if you have a permit for the site from deep, do you,
We
Henry?
don't have any permits for that site from any organization.
So, I lost what you meant there. So if you wanted to drop material there, you'd have to go to who?
You don't have to have permits for what he typically uses the site for, and that's concrete and what else, Henry?
In the past, before I was able to get a lease with the Sauls property, after severe storms, we used to store wood there, tree stumps from the cleanups. At one time, we actually stored sand there when we used sand on the road, excess sand we stored there. It was a staging area and hasn't been used for long before I even came to Public Works.
I'm confused. The Sauls property, you mean the South Cherry Street
Yes,
area?
when I acquired that, I was able to take, we got a filling permit. It was a big hole there.
Right.
And we filled it with clean fill. And so we were able to cut back on the usage at 91 North Turnpike.
Tree stumps aren't clean fill.
We didn't take tree stumps down there.
I thought you said that, so that's what I'm...
No, at 91 North Turnpike, before we had the area that is known as the Sauls property opposite the landfill.
Right.
Before we had that property, we stored all manner of debris there, including tree stumps, logs, things like that.
So, okay, I'm confused. If you said you used to store them there, now you have the Sauls property, you're putting them there. But that's not the point in this discussion. So, but if you can put some of the stuff at the Sauls property, that's a better location for it. And again, I just want to reiterate that I would hope that, I don't know what the town's doing. I mean, just so you're aware, Covanta right now has a Title V permit that's up for renewal. And I would hope that the town would get active in the renewal process because of the emissions that they release from that plant. And it's going before DEEP starts on November 4th, I think is the first hearing. And it's behooves the town to take, in the mayor's office, to take an active role in this. And I just don't see any of it, or even the council, because it keeps saying that there's time that you want to say something. You can, no, that there's not more outrage over some of these things, and there's not more discussion on the Garden Road, etc. Yes, sir. Well, it's pollution, sir, and this is another area that I would hope that we would not dump anything over there anymore, because 10 years from now, as
All
air
right.
pollution, well, I'll finish. As air pollution now is a known carcinogen,
Right.
you keep dropping stuff over there, something's going to get into that water, and you even if you're dropping what you think is clean fill over there, are you testing it before it gets there? And if so, how are you testing it? And something's eventually going to get in that system and contaminate the well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Vincent Avalon, One Ashford Court. Look, I thank Mr. McCauley for all the good work that he's done. I'm sure he's done a lot of great things for the environment. But all the good things doesn't exonerate you when you break the law. And if Mr. McCauley is going to state here now that he didn't tell the council that he broke the law, that's fine. But once again, thanks for everything you've done. But the point here is that the law is the law for everyone, and no one should get away with breaking the law. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yes.
Bill Comerford, 5 Broadview Drive. I got involved with this property back in 2008 when the neighbor across the street on Sunny Acres had called up and complained about all the catch basin material being deposited there and what took place. I've got all the memos. It's taken me 4 years to compile all this stuff. I didn't really want to bore you with all the details, but if you connected the dots, you can clearly see a pattern of abuse, in my opinion. abuse of the aquifer protection area, which clearly was stated is a sensitive area and that we were supposed to comply. Mr. Santos from the Air Quality Division was contacted in 2008 of Mr. Poulos, if I'm saying his name wrong, I apologize, said that the town was of no help. He complained since the cease and desist, or during the cease and desist term, throughout the 90s all the way through 2008, and it all fell on deaf ears. It's all in the memos. So he had nowhere else to turn. He called DEP, he called EPA, Inland Wetlands, he called Boston, he called anybody that would listen to him because he was frustrated. Frustrated because our town didn't act upon the activity of what was going on. My question is this: where, since 2009, and Mr. Dickinson received the memo about best management practices, where it clearly identifies what we're supposed to do with the catch basin material, since that time, where was it deposited?
Mr. McCulley has answered that question.
So what's the answer?
Henry, want to answer it again?
I don't deny that some of it was deposited on North Turnpike Road. For a while, we took it down to sewer division, but yes, there was some deposited there without a permit.
So when we say it was deposited at the sewer division, does that mean it went through the sewer department itself, or it wasn't? It was just dumped somewhere down there?
All right, let's not try to be a comedian, all right? Let's get at it.
I'm not. This is serious, Mr. Parisi.
I know it's serious. I wish you'd treat it that way. Now, let's go.
I have with me a memo dated February 13th, 2009. It's the notes that were in Aaron O'Hare's file. I believe everything that you guys had been copied by Mr. Economopoulos, Councilor Economopoulos, you were given and you had the opportunity, if you wanted to connect the dots yourself. Whether you did it or you didn't, it was your prerogative. But to sit there and say, well, I don't have this piece of paper, I don't think it's true. Because if you did do it, you'd have this. I'll submit this. I want a copy back of it, but you guys did have this. It's dated February 13th, 2009. It was to Vincent Mesha, who works for the Water Division. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Water Division and Mr. Mesha. And it says, these are questions from Aaron to Mr. Mesha. Are there Water Division site inspections? They do an aquifer protection survey? Henry McCulley has never sought approval. Are activities under the Aquifer Protection Agency? Regulated uses, question mark. Zoning, no site plan approval. Public Works garage, road salt was, and it was underlined numerous amount of times, getting into the groundwater. Vincent Mesha's department made them comply with best management practices. Roger, and I'm assuming it's Roger Dan, got Henry to move the street sweepings. That was in 2009. As far as Mr. Fishbein was looking for page 2, I have page 2 for the piece of paper that he was looking for. It went on to say, Council Mike Spiteri, who was a councilman for years up here, and he was actually contacted by this same Mr. Polo at the same time because he had no use for what the administration, I believe, in my opinion, was doing as far as help goes. And it says in this memo, and this is again from Aaron O'Hare, dated February 27th, which was 14 days after Vincent Mesha. It says, Councilman Michael Spiteri, related to the issue based on a complaint. Besides the matter of filling wetlands, he was concerned about possible erosion into the wetlands, possible storage of unpermitted materials located at the site within the Aquifer Protection District, and the potential for these materials deposit to impact the town's well. So clearly he was also concerned. He brought it up. Mr. Dickinson, after DEP came down here, as we're well aware, January 6th, 2009, it says, the town at a minimum, after they're caught with their hand in the cookie jar, with these catch basin materials, Mr. McCulley just told you he was dumping catch basin materials there, should follow the department's street sweeping reuse guidance document until such time as guidance superseded through the adoption and revision of the regulations, new permits, and best management practices, and they sent a copy of the guidance. They knew what they were supposed to do. Mr. McCulley just said at some point that we have the Salts property. Mr. McCulley applied for a special permit in 2005 to fill a hole. And at that same meeting, and to apply for the special permit, he said he was going to take all this material, not this material, but the street sweepings, and dump it there. So clearly, we had a place to dump it, according to what he at least said at the 2009 meeting for planning and zoning to apply for the special permit, that he had a 45,000 cubic yard hole to fill. Now, the thing that no one has ever brought up yet is the town public works is supposed to have what's called a stormwater management plan. And in that stormwater management plan, it's supposed to specify where these materials are supposed to go. I have yet to see the stormwater management plan, and in that stormwater management plan, where does it say the catch basins are supposed to go as we stand here today? Mr. McCulley should be able to answer that. Thank you.
Henry, I'll answer it. Public Works gets a permit from DEP. What is it, every year? Go ahead, Henry, you do it.
Public Works does not have a stormwater management plan. Your friend, Mr. Okonomopoulos, FOI'd me, I believe it was 3 weeks ago, tore my office apart for hours looking for it. We do not have a stormwater management plan. However, we do have
But
permits.
every year, don't you receive a renewal of a permit?
No, it's I believe it's every 5 years.
Okay, every 5 years. Have you received the renewals?
Yes.
So does DEP would not renew what we need unless they had all of the information necessary? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Have you been requested to supply anything else?
I've never been requested to reply to
That's the
supply
answer
this.
to the issue.
So, Mr. Dickinson, if I'm to understand you correctly, in 2004...
It's Mayor, Bill. Mayor Dickinson.
Mayor Dickinson. We were never required to have a stormwater management plan in 2004 because it behooves me. Because in your annual report that you're saying that we get, which we do, it says that they reference the stormwater management plan. But we don't have one.
Who is they? Who is they?
Your consultant that does your annual report.
What is the agency that oversees this issue?
DEEP.
And is DEEP not responding to our request for renewals because we lack something that they feel we should have?
I didn't ask for the renewals. I asked for the original stormwater management plan that was supposed to be issued in 2004, which clearly would have stated where this catch basin material by the permit is supposed to go.
I ask you again, has the town received renewal of the permit in question consistently since 2004? Do you know the answer to that?
Yes, I do know the answer.
Have we received new renewal of permits?
No, you didn't. As a matter of fact,
Yes, we have.
Matter of fact, Mr. McCulley just stated that the stormwater management plan doesn't exist and it wasn't a requirement. But I believe there was a gentleman named Chris Stone that's been trying to get the same document because it didn't exist here. I drove to Hartford to get it because he is the person that is in charge of the stormwater management plan, and he doesn't have it.
And who does he work for?
He works for DEEP.
And that same agency has renewed our permit consistently since 2004, but we lack an important piece of information, which I guess they're wrong in renewing our permit. Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is that you have a permit called an MS4 general permit that is not part of the requirement for the aquifer protection area as part of their stormwater management plan. So the fact is,
If this was of concern to DEEP, I think they would be in touch with us. They have not been in touch with us seeking any other information, and we receive our stormwater permit renewal every 5 years. So you're concerned about something that apparently the people who have jurisdiction, that is the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, are not concerned about, at least not to our knowledge.
Okay. All right, let's move along.
I'll move along. So, to make this short and sweet, I guess if Mr. Mayor Bill Dickinson lived alongside of me, and I'm glad he doesn't because it looks like his property.
All right, let's stay on target.
Okay.
All right?
Sure.
Because I don't want to get into stuff about, okay? Let's stay away from it.
One of the things that bothers me, if by chance he did, and all this was allowed to take place, the cease and desist violations, the continual willful, wanton neglect to following what was instructed in 2009, and then again. And if I did the same thing, I'm assuming that every resident in this town gets the same leniency to not have to violate or follow our zoning regulations, our housing codes, and everything else, and it's all just an honest mistake. We're going to comply. Don't worry about it. So if someone else lives in an aquifer protection area, they have a leaky tank in the ground, we should say, you know what, don't worry about it. Or if they decide to throw batteries in an aquifer protection area, don't worry about it. We'll make it right the next time. What bothers me is, as the town has the opportunity to finally step up to the plate and do what's right, we have to find excuses why we shouldn't be doing what we should have done when it happened back in 2008.
Okay.
That we're turning a deaf ear to the aquifer, that we can have the opportunity to say, you know what, we have the Salts property. There's plenty enough other places that we can at least do this, but not to do it.
We've been over this. Mayor, do you have a comment? And we'll wrap this up.
I just want to state again, in 2008, 2009, the issue was of expansion of the site. That was the issue.
That isn't the case. You guys have the paperwork that clearly shows the street sweepings, the 2009 memo dated January 6, 2009. It says right in there. It has nothing about the expansion. The expansion went all the way down to 1993. As a matter of fact, if you watch the video of the inland wetlands with Mr. Vitale, if you watch the whole video, he says that the Public Works has been dumping at least 10,000 cubic yards. Mr. Bill Dickinson knew about it. They knew about it. It fell on deaf ears. If you watch the whole video, it clearly shows that. I'm not making any of this up. But yet, they had nowhere to turn, and that was the end result. It was an embarrassment then, and it's an embarrassment now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Wait a minute, sir. Any other? Yes, ma'am.
Sharon Sanders.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, South Cherry Street. I just want to say, first of all, about Public Works. At that other meeting where he was scrutinized, and it was really horrible the way he was talked to, Mr. McCauley. And I have to tell you, I think he's a stand-up guy. He came there and he had said, yes, I made a mistake. And Mr. Zandri is quoted in the paper saying, oh, I thought he would lie, which really says something there. He came and he took all that crap, and his department does such a good job. I've had to call them. I have had nothing but good responses, and I've had people that have asked me who to call, and I say, you call Public Works, and they've always gotten a great response. The reason Mr. Fishbein or nobody asked Mr. McCully any questions, I would assume, is because they were satisfied with his answers. Tonight, I mean, they say it's not political, but only Mr. Zandri and Mr. Econopoulos
All right.
gets that paper. So what I'm saying is, of course you're going to have questions, you know, and you don't get full, complete answers. Well, at least not tonight, we didn't hear any. So I'm just saying, as for disciplinary action, usually that's done in private. I worked at the phone company. If somebody got in trouble, it was done in private. The mayor has said he has spoken, and I would just assume then that is taken care of. So I wish this subject would just drop for now. Thanks.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would like to respond to that, if I may.
I'm sure you do.
I never said that Henry McCully lied. I said I was actually surprised when he didn't deny any of the things that I asked him. And it wasn't because I thought he would or he wouldn't. I was just not expecting him to be forthright under the type of questions that I had to ask him. I asked many follow-up questions from that meeting internally, and I brought none of them up at any of the meetings following because they were all answered in completion. Mr. McCully has responded to every single request that I've made, and when I needed clarification, I followed up with him and he responded. I had brought up prior questions about whether or not the purchasing ordinance was filed, internally asking questions. Mr. McCully responded to every single one of those questions, and I even had an internal conversation with a couple of members of the town council regarding the same. Because all my questions were answered to satisfactory levels, I saw no need to bring it up further. But it is a complete mischaracterization to say I thought he would lie. So I just wanted to set the record straight on that. Thank you. I just wanted to correct the overstatement.
Microphone on? Is your microphone on?
Is your mic on, Bob?
Sorry, it isn't. Yes, sir. Wait, sir. Wait a minute, please.
Larry Morgenstein, 177 South Main Street. It's getting late, so I'll be brief.
Thank you.
Yeah, I understand. My statement is that it sounds like the problem is we need to be proactive. We've been getting caught and doing things to remediate after the fact. That's a problem. We should be ahead of it. In this case, we were depositing materials in 2009 to the present, well, until April of 2013. So the thing is that at this point, this question is for the mayor. Now, your subordinate, the Public Works Director, made a decision. He knew he was non-compliant. That put the town at some risk for environmental violations, and thankfully that didn't happen. It also put us at risk for fines, and thankfully that didn't happen. Do you, as his chief and of the representative of the town and the taxpayers, do you agree with his decision? Second part of my question is, you have somebody working under you, a subordinate, Public Works Director, whoever that chief is. They make a decision in 2009. They know that it's non-compliant. It puts the town in jeopardy possibly for fines. It puts the environment at risk. Do you approve of somebody not coming to you and finding out about that from 2009, and you stated you did not know until 2013 of April? Is that the sort of thing that you want happening? And then my final question is, do you ultimately take responsibility for finding the town in this situation?
Obviously, as the Chief Executive Officer, I take responsibility for what departments do and the services that are rendered. I'm not aware of everything all the time. I couldn't possibly be. I rely upon people to make judgments and do the work that's necessary for the community. In evaluating whether a person is performing that task or not, I take into account all aspects of what they do. So, do people make mistakes? Yes, they do make mistakes. If there is not an intent, a disregard, an attitude of not caring, a lack of conscientiousness, a repeated failure to make every effort to do things properly, certainly that is taken into account. With regard to Mr. McCulley, I do not find those attitudes, that behavior, or that conduct of business. Does Mr. McCulley make mistakes? Yes. There is no one who doesn't make mistakes. We all make mistakes. But you have to evaluate the total picture and look at what is appropriate under the circumstances. So Mr. McCulley, at no time said, oh, well, I don't care, this is just what we do, and no. Mr. McCulley is one of the most conscientious, dedicated, and a person motivated by a great desire to do the absolute best he can for this town. That's what I know. Can he always achieve that? Well, if he could, he should start a religion, because as a human, he's probably going to fall short, but that's what drives him. He's a person who wants to do the job right, seeks the training necessary, tries to treat everyone fairly. I take all that into account. And yes, in this circumstance, there's something that shouldn't happen. No one's going to argue it should happen. The town had some risk, that's correct, and we were fortunate in most of what has occurred. However, that has to be measured against the total picture of what his department has to do, what his responsibilities are, and the attitude with which he goes about his daily activities. And then a judgment is made as to what's appropriate under the circumstances.
And we need to be compliant. Thank you.
Is it Mr. Daly? I believe you're next.
No, I just want to clarify, because I think I misspoke. The water division has 3 production wells. The one closest to the dump site has not shown any impact. It's well number 2 and 3 that have some business to clean up. Number 2 has hydrocarbons, and we don't know where they came from. Number 3, I'm told, has manganese. That makes water unpotable. I didn't mean to imply that well number 1 was a victim of all this.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the public? I think this topic is done.
Exhausted.
Therefore, Mr. Chairman, would you entertain a motion to adjourn?
I certainly would.
So moved.
Second.
Made and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The meeting's adjourned.